tomorrow. Yes. Give you a little change of pace. Yeah.
That's not off-road. I don't want to take that off.
No, that's not, we're not going to have this off-road. So, all right, is everybody ready to go? Everybody? Okay, good. Good afternoon, everybody. I wanted to provide a daily update on the status of our restoration from the weekend storms that knocked out power to 122,000 customers. So as of now, we have restored power to 90,000 customers in the last 2 days. We have about 32,000 customers to go. The map that you're seeing immediately to my left and on your right represents, in the areas of blue, areas that were once out that have been restored. The areas in red are areas that we are still working on restoration for. So substantial work has been conducted and completed all over our service territory, but there is more work to do. You will see that we have the municipality count here. There's about 5,000 in Bartlett that are still out, 16,000 in Memphis, 2,600 in Millington, and 7,000 in unincorporated Shelby County. You can see the other numbers there. So we do keep up with each individual municipality and unincorporated areas. And we have work happening in all of those areas. The work today is being conducted, the restoration efforts, by 101 repair crews. That is up by 10. We had another 10 contract crews join us overnight. And they are supported by an army of hundreds of other personnel that are handling logistics, information, engineering, and support for this work that is happening. So it's not just the 100 crews, they're supported by a whole team of people to allow them to do their work. If you'll go to the next page, there were some questions that I realize we always get. I don't see crews in my neighborhood. What you see here is a snapshot. It was taken just a while ago. These are the MLGW crews that are out there, but just a reminder, that our contracted crews, we don't have a GPS position on them, but if I did, there'd be another 64 vehicles on the map up there, just showing that relative to the outages, you'll see vehicles represented here. That's our crews that are working every place around the service area. So be sure to know that there are crews working on every outage that we have in the area. We do know that there is heavy damage in the Shelby Forests, the Bartlett, the Raleigh, and the Millington areas. Those are the areas where the most severe damage was incurred, and so we have the majority of crews, or a large number of crews working on those outages. I shared yesterday that the large outages that affect the most customers, we have largely corrected all of those. So we are moving on to outages now where each thing that we correct is going to affect a smaller number of customers. So each fix might only bring 100 or 200 customers online, and then we'll keep moving down the line where each correction might only bring a double-digit number of customers online until we get down to all of those individual single customer outages. So in a letter that I wrote to our customers last night, I can make this akin to hand-to-hand combat. This is really where we are out in the neighborhoods looking at every individual outage and assigning crews to do that work. So that work will continue until we have every customer restored. If I could move to the next slide. As you all know, next one, Mike, we had to issue a precautionary boil water advisory for the extreme northern part of Shelby County because of some impacts on our water wells that serve that area. I'm happy to report that we have lifted that boil water advisory as of 11:25 this morning. We never detected any issues in the water whatsoever. Just a reminder that once the pressure gets below 20 psi, we have to, by statute, issue that advisory. But the water was always safe, and we've confirmed that with testing and have lifted the boil water advisory as of now. Next. I did want to focus a little on the weather. I realize, speaking with the media here, this is something that you guys pay a lot of attention to. The temperatures today are high, and they're getting hotter over the next few days. That is going to make it tough for everyone in our community. And so we're moving from an electrical emergency into kind of a heat advisory emergency for everyone, whether you have power or not. So I would ask everybody to share best practices when it is extra hot. Everyone obviously should stay well hydrated, but resources for folks in the community who still don't have power are going to be important. And making sure that people are aware of where the cooling centers are, where areas of respite are, is important. The Office of Emergency Management with the City of Memphis, Shelby County Emergency Management Agency, they will make an announcement when there is formal cooling centers established for overnight, so I would ask that you look at those agencies for information about that. Similarly, when the temperature gets very high, it really drives demand for our electric system, and the load on our electric system gets very high. And so what I'm going to ask is that everybody use sensible measures to conserve electricity where and when you can. Irrespective of an electrical outage, we want to do that. Our recommendation is that you set your thermostat in your home no lower than 78 degrees. If you set your thermostat lower than 78, it's very likely that your air conditioner is just going to stay running continuously. 78 is our recommendation. We are doing that at all of our MLGW buildings as we do every day. I ask everybody to do that. I also ask that you avoid any unnecessary electrical demands during peak hours, and peak hours are those late afternoon and early evening. So, for instance, if you have an electric dryer and you're drying some clothes, I ask that you do that maybe later at night or very early in the morning before the morning rush hour. So some sensible conservation just to make sure that we preserve all of the electricity that we do have. I realize there's a temptation when it's hot just to put that thermostat all the way to the left side and try to get some cool. 78 will feel very cool when the temperature is close to 100 outside. So if everybody could help with that, we would certainly appreciate that over the next few days. Moving on. We do know, as I mentioned, that there are some customers who have lost food because of refrigeration. If you have SNAP benefits, I'll leave this up. There's information here where you can get SNAP benefits restored. Next. Also, we do have some respite areas and cooling centers that are open today. Bartlett Baptist, Faith Baptist, and the Memphis Public Libraries are open. And those are areas where you can go and get some respite from the heat. That will continue for the next few days. Also, as I said, the emergency managers for Shelby County and all of our cities will come together and announce, pardon me for the interrupt, they will announce when there are formal cooling centers established. And so that formal cooling center is typically operated overnight and supported with the kinds of resources that you need for people to get the care that they need. I just want to put a note of emphasis on this. In addition to these resources, if you just don't know where to turn, in an emergency we ask people to call 911, and that's not what we're talking about. If you see a pothole, we ask people to call 311 and report that. There's another number that you can call. It is 211. That is a resource hotline that people can use. If you recall, during the COVID pandemic, if you had a question about where you could get a vaccine or a test, 211 could direct you. 211 is standing by. They are open after hours and they can take your call. If you just need some food and you're not sure where to turn, they have more than 450 agencies that they partner with, and they can refer you for almost anything that you might need. Everything from social services to mental health to food insecurity. 211 is a great resource, and so they are going to be prepared with some information should you need it. They can't help you with an outage restoration, but they can help you with the other kinds of resources that you need. So 211 is a good resource. The last thing I want to talk about today is vegetation. We've spoken about this in the last few days. Over our history, 40% of the electric outages we have can be attributed to vegetation. In the last few years, and certainly in this storm, it is a much higher percentage than 40% attributed to vegetation. You will see at Memphis City Council meeting, the next meeting that they have, I will be bringing to them contracts for $220 million over the next 5 years for vegetation management. Quite frankly, the impacts of the COVID pandemic really impacted our contractors' ability to deliver the services in the way that we wanted it to be done. We are behind in vegetation management, and I understand that. That is why we are bringing these contracts so that we can get back on that 3-year cutting cycle. So we are aware of the impacts of vegetation. As I talked about yesterday, if there's a 100-foot tree that falls, that vegetation management will not take care of that, but it will take care of a very large majority of the outages that we have. So it is a lot of money. It was part of our way forward 5-year plan. We are bringing on 3 separate contractors to make sure that no one contractor can underperform and we can still get the work done. So look for that coming at the City Council meeting in about another week's time. And once we get that, we will get those crews to work immediately as a part of our process to really improve the reliability and resilience of our electrical system. So with that, I'll stop and take questions.
Doug, our viewers want to know if the outage map is working, because 4 days into the crisis, they're calling and being told they're the first to report an outage in their neighborhood. Why is that?
So I would say that we're day 3 of the crisis. We started Sunday night at 7 p.m., so Monday, Tuesday, and here we are midday Wednesday. The outage map is working. There is, as we talked about yesterday, in that reporting system, there is a glitch where if we restore the circuit, we will say your power has been restored. If you call again, it may say you were the first to report. We are trying to correct that such that people don't get that information. It's fair to say that we know about most of the outages that are happening in the area right now. I understand that's frustrating. We have taken that from day 1 back to our team to say, how do we fix this to keep that from happening? I apologize for that frustration. We are going to get that corrected, and I understand how frustrating that is to customers.
So you alluded to it, the triple degree temperatures that are coming.
Yes.
What is your confidence in the power grid? Should we expect rolling blackouts?
No, I'm not suggesting that at all. I'm just suggesting that it is a stressor. This happens every year. So we always ask, when the temperatures get above 95, we always ask for conservation. So I would likely be putting this message out if we had not had this electric outage. We always want to be mindful of when the temperatures are at the extreme to make sure we don't do anything to add undue pressure. So again, not adding any extra electrical loads that you don't have to, avoiding peak hour charging. This is a conversation we're going to have more frequently in the future. If you can imagine a future where many people have an electric vehicle, I'll be asking and we'll be talking together about when's the best time to do that. We probably don't want everybody, when they get home from work at 6 o'clock, to plug in at the same time, because that puts a huge demand. That's what we're saying here with unnecessary the parallel here is when you come home from work, let's just not start the dishwasher and the dryer all at the same time. Let's put that into off hours. Let's make sure our thermostats, and I know I talk to my family every day. Come on guys, 78 is the appropriate temperature to keep that at. And I know that that seems tough for some folks, but when it is more than 100 degrees outside, I assure you, if you want to make sure that 78 feels comfortable, step outside for a moment, come on back in, and you'll feel very cool. So we're asking for that kind of sensible conservation.
There's in your initial say there's an issue or a glitch with the customer service and people need to call for outages. Has that been fixed to keep up with this?
So our customer call center is fully staffed, and they are taking every kind of call. There was a moment when the call volume got so high that they were moving to an emergency mode where they were just taking the emergency calls and putting non-emergency calls. We're able to handle the volume now, so our customer call center staff is answering all calls.
Then in a weird
Yes.
situation, a man on Inverberry says he has partial power because he says, in his words, 120 volts have been disconnected from his transformer, so only partial power. Are you looking into situations like that?
So that's a situation for an individual customer where it sounds like, as we bring power to every household, it has 2 120 volt. That's how you get enough power for your dryer, which is typically 220, right? So you have 110 and 220. It sounds like there's an issue with one of those phases coming to his particular home, and that would be an individual customer outage that our customer service agents or a troubleshooter could take care of. That's particular to his house. I don't know about the transformer issue without looking into that specific thing, but that is something that can occur while you will have part of your power working. It's typically a problem with the service drop to that particular home. Yes, ma'am.
Getting to the nitty-gritty, how much are
Yeah, so weatherheads, and I appreciate you asking that question because we can do all of our work to clear the trees, get those big power lines and poles backed up, and sometimes it will come right down to that drop that comes to your house. If you have electric power coming to your house from what we call overhead, in other words, there's a pole with a wire and a transformer, you'll see a line coming to your house. On the side of your home, there will be a conduit that looks like a little bit of a cobra head. That is the weatherhead on your house. If a branch falls on that service drop, it can pull the weatherhead away from the house. If that weatherhead is not connected, our team will ask you the homeowner, to have your electrician reconnect that, because that is part of the home. When they are building it, they will attach that weatherhead. MLGW just attaches the electric to that weatherhead. So there are a number of electricians, there's lots of them here, who can come out and help make sure that weatherhead. Our customer service technician will make sure that you know, here's what needs to happen before we can connect that electrical power. We want to make sure that it's safe to connect power. And when you hear us say we've restored powers to customers who are able to accept it, that's typically what we mean. We want to make sure that someone has checked that breaker box, someone has checked that weatherhead to make sure that we don't cause a problem like an electrical fire by connecting something that's not safe to do so. It will be an issue for some select number of customers. I encourage customers who know if they go out and take a look and see their weatherhead seems to be disturbed, that they get somebody to take a look at that, especially if they see a wire on the ground or completely detached from the house. So really good question, thank you.
You said the percentage of outages attributed to vegetation during this storm was much higher than the standard 40%.
Yes.
How much higher?
I'll be very precise and say a lot. I really don't know, Keely, exactly what the percentage. Just talking to our folks in the field and what they are seeing, the majority is due to vegetation, like you're seeing here. There were some outages where the winds caused our lines to slap together or become intertwined. Those are relatively easy to see, and for our folks to get out there, it takes some time to repair. That's a wind-related outage, not vegetation, but most of those have been taken care of. But the very vast majority is because of vegetation that you're seeing here.
For
Any other
those
questions?
who are not
Yes.
SNAP recipients, are there any options for replacing their food? They say that the
Sure.
lines are long, they can't get
Yeah.
lines.
Well, that's a good question. And remember, I'll come back to the 211. They are an excellent resource for individuals at any time who are seeking assistance. I do know that the Shelby County Office of Emergency Management is working with the Mid-South Food Bank on some options for individuals. I don't have them at the ready, but we have an entire organization of emergency managers here in the county who can help people with those needs. And so I can't point to them today, but I do know that they are standing up and ready to help people where and when they can. So any other questions for y'all?
People are sleeping in their cars
Yes.
right now. It's just become a desperate situation for many households. What
It
would you
is.
tell them?
I would tell them that help is on the way. It doesn't help you at the moment when you're uncomfortable and when it's hot. Our customers are our friends and family, and we are not immune from this as well. So we have sympathy and empathy for all of our customers. Every single customer is important. And so there is urgency. Our entire team is urgently working to get that power back on. Customers have called and say, I'm frustrated, I'm tired, I'm angry, and we understand that. I'll go back to the map and say 90,000 of your friends and neighbors have been restored. We want you to get restored too. So progress is happening, although it may not feel like it at your house. We are working to get to you as quickly as we possibly can.
I have one last
Oh,
part.
yes.
Question. Can you give a sense to any of our viewers about how you decide who goes next? Is a certain type of outage getting priority right now?
Well, that's a good question. The question was about how do we decide what the priorities are. We have our very first priority is to keep the water systems and the wastewater systems operating, as well as the hospitals operating. That is always our first priority. Then the outages are not a function of neighborhood, not a function of council district or commission district. It's a function of where is the outage that is causing the most customers to be out of power? So if I can identify the circuits that have between 1,000 and 1,500 customers, I will do that first so that I can get that many customers on. And then I will prioritize the ones that have hundreds of customers out. And we'll work all the way down, because that is how we get the most people on the quickest. So that's the prioritization, and it matters not. If you look at our system operations board, where we control all of this, there is not one council district boundary, there's not one municipal boundary, it is a series of electrical circuits, and that's what we're looking at is the circuit. We frankly may not even know which municipality or council district's in until after we do some analysis and say, oh, that's where that is. But we're looking at the circuit and the number of people on the circuit and saying, how do we get as many people on as quickly as we can?
Final question, how is it possible? We had one woman who, her house was the only one on in the whole neighborhood. She said hers never goes off, she has no idea why.
Wow, well, that's interesting. That is the first time I've heard that we've had one house that's the only one on. So I guess I'll have to find out about that. If you give me the address, I'd be happy to look at it, because I know that we don't have any single household customers that we serve. Everybody is on a circuit somehow that has served that neighborhood. So that's very interesting. Maybe she has a backup generator, I don't know, but I'd love to find out how she's able to do that. So, well, thank you all. We will not do a presser here tomorrow. We'll be in the field somewhere, so we'll give you that update so that we can give you an update from the field. And so I just appreciate all of you helping to spread the word and getting the word out to customers, because that's important. People take their information in different ways, and you guys are an incredibly important part of helping to share that information. So thank you all for being here, and thank you for sharing the information.